Hello, it's Mark here. This is my first YouTube video for a very long time. And the reason was quite simply the pandemic. Lockdown in the UK was not great for me, and I just kind of disconnected from everything and binge watched Netflix. But anyway, I'm back. And this video is something, it's kind of a special video in that it was suggested by the playwright and author and all-round talented guy, Adam Z. Robinson, who runs the Book of Darkness and Light Facebook group and many, many other things. I will link all his details below. Incidentally, if, like me, you're a fan of ghost stories and want to turn your hand to writing them, you should really go on one of Adam's ghost story writing courses, because it is just brilliant and amazing and fun as well. So anyway, details below. This video is really about something suggested by Adam for International Women's Day, which is the 8th of March. Is it the 8th of March? I think it's the 8th of March. And before anybody says, why isn't there an International Men's Day? There is. It's on the 19th of November. So now we've got that out the way, let's get on. And the suggestion for the videos was just really highlighting women authors who had really kind of been written out of the horror, ghost story, spooky story, weird fiction genre, or who just need celebrating, writing in that genre. So here's mine, and it's not one that you're going to necessarily expect for ghostly stuff. I am going to talk about the woman that I have a picture on my wall just there, Agatha Christie. Now, Agatha is obviously really well known for her crime fiction, to the point that she's like one of the best-selling authors of all time. And aside from Shakespeare, she is the best-selling British author of all time, with, you know, sales in the billions of her books, which is a huge achievement. And she's brilliant. I cannot tell you how much of an Agatha Christie fan I am. The way she plots, the way she really kind of reveals things slowly, and also how she can really blindside you with a plot and the outcome of a book. And so rightly, she's revered and extremely popular for her crime fiction. But one area that really gets kind of sidelined in her writing is the fact that she did write spooky, ghostly, weird stories occasionally. She never wrote pure horror. That's one thing to say to start with. She never wrote something that could be considered a pure horror novel or a pure horror short story. I mean, a couple of books that I've got here. Hallowe'en Party. Now, you'd think that Hallowe'en Party would contain spooky stuff, but it doesn't really. It's just set at a Halloween party, and it's an outright murder mystery. But it is great. It's one of my favourite Agatha Christie's. There are other novels and other short stories where there's kind of a light touch of the supernatural. And for instance, and I've got my film tie-in edition here, or TV tie-in edition, The Pale Horse, which was recently a BBC adaptation, which you really should watch. I really enjoyed it. A lot of purists didn't enjoy it as much. I did. Because it really weaved in that supernatural element. They changed the ending as well. I'm not going to give anything away, but they really kind of weaved in the supernatural element. But in the novel, it's kind of witchcraft and premonitions and stuff like that are just kind of in the background of what's really going on in the book. But again, it's a crime novel. So I think when you read Agatha Christie, there is kind of a background spookiness or creepiness, but in some of her short stories, especially, she covers things like witchcraft, curses, ghosts, seances, the occult. She never really said in her lifetime how she felt about the supernatural. She never really wrote about it in any great detail. But the thing was, she was living through that era. When she was at the height of her writing, she was living through that era where all this weird stuff was just in the background of culture. It was the high mark of kind of spiritualism and seances. The investigations of Harry Price, the famous ghost hunter, who incidentally I'm going to do a video about at some point, because there's much been written by him and about him that really needs, making the world more known of, more aware of that. So I think that this spookiness or ghostliness kind of made its way into her writing, and certainly overtly in some of the short stories, because it was just there in the background. It was part of society. It was part of the kind of the zeitgeist of the time. And also as well, I think we're living through a very similar time. You see lots more shows about, reality shows about ghosts and UFOs and stuff like that. Seems to be that interest that's coming back about weird stuff, which is interesting in itself. Now, with her short stories, I'm going to show you this. This is my first edition of a book called The Hound of Death and Other Stories by Agatha Christie, published in, I think it was 1933, but that's my first edition. It's a bit battered, and what I really love is at some point somebody has put 2 cups of coffee on it. I wonder what their story was, what their history was. But this was the first anthology of Agatha's ghostly and more supernaturally tinged literature. And the short stories in here are absolutely great. Now, the great thing is, because this is, obviously quite an old book, recently, a lot of the stories were republished in this anthology, The Last Seance, Tales of the Supernatural. And this is worth reading. If you like Agatha Christie, if you like ghost stories, even if you like crime stuff, this is worth reading. Because she brings everything that she gave to her crime novels, the plotting, the tension, the building of suspense, all are the same in the supernatural stories. And I'm going to concentrate on 2 stories. And I'm not going to give any spoilers because I think you should go and read them. And they're both in the Last Seance anthology that's recently come out. The first one is a short story called The Lamp. And this is a pure ghost story. It's not even beating around the bush about. You learn very early on that there is something supernatural going on. And it starts in that great traditional way, which is a family moving into a house that has a reputation, shall we say. There are stories told about this house. But being modern go-getters, this family say, we don't believe all that. We're not going to stop moving in because of all these stories. Well, maybe they should have reconsidered. This story is very, very short, but in that short amount of time, Agatha really turns the screw, if you pardon the ghost story pun, really turns the screw up slowly but surely to an amazing payoff, a shocking payoff that you kind of see coming, but you're really hoping it's not going to come. And it kind of took my breath away when I read that. Absolutely brilliantly crafted ghost story. The second one I'm going to mention is The Adventure of the Egyptian Tomb. Now, I love this because I love stories about the curse of the mummy, tombs being opened, ancient curses being unleashed. I love that kind of genre. You know, I love the old Hammer horror films and the Universal films about the Mummy. Didn't really like the Tom Cruise one that much, but yeah, it's another story. And there is a Poirot story about an Egyptian curse, a tomb being opened, then mysterious deaths happening. And this is not necessarily a supernatural story, though it does keep you guessing. And in fact, Poirot keeps you guessing all the way through. That's what I'm going to say about the plot. But it's what I call a potential Scooby-Doo story. And I don't mean that as any insult to the story. What I mean is, because let's face it, if you don't like Scooby-Doo, well, I've got nothing for you. You know, Scooby-Doo is the highest compliment that I can think of. It's what I call a Scooby-Doo story, which is basically, it could be supernatural, but it could be somebody making it look as though supernatural things are happening. And again, a really short story, but in that time, Agatha Christie really kind of plots this intricately and so well. And so by the end, when you know what's going on, you just feel this sense of satisfaction that you've been on a journey. And as I said, there's kind of spooky moments and things that make you think, well, maybe this could be somewhere else, something else. Could there something really be going on that isn't quite right? So I would highly recommend, again, if you get nothing else, get hold of this, The Last Seance, Tales of the Supernatural by Agatha Christie. You will find some other stories, other supernatural stories dotted around other anthologies. But if you want to get to her best ones, that's your best bet. And so, on International Women's Day, I'm celebrating Agatha Christie, a brilliant crime writer, but also a great writer of weird, spooky fiction, which is something I love. So good on you, Agatha. I think you're played a blinder with the spooky stuff. I'm a fan. But yeah, I think it's also if you don't know the story of Agatha Christie as well, it's worth kind of, you know, maybe looking up on Wikipedia or something. She was a woman who went through quite a lot in her life and really came out strong and the best at what she was doing. And I think that needs celebrating. But anyway, that's the video. So thank you very much for watching. And I will be posting more about different stuff. Not quite sure what yet, but I'm going to aim for a weekly video. So I'm glad I'm back. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. And go and read some Agatha. Okay then, bye.